Hi everybody, welcome along to the latest Rangers Rabble book podcast, if we'd like to call it that. Once again, I'm delighted to be joined by the author of I almost said a new Rangers book there. It's not a Rangers book this time, it's actually a book about Scottish football. The book's title is 99 Iconic Moments in Scottish Football, from the famous to the obscure, Scotland's glorious, unusual and cult games, players and events. And having read quite a lot of it and looked through all of it, I can testify that that is in fact very true. And I'm delighted to be joined by the author of said book, Mark Poole. Mark, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Wilf. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. So can you tell us all a little bit about yourself? Because I know nothing about you either, other than the fact that Pitch Publishing very generously said, we'll send you this book, and do you want to speak to Mark? And I said, yes, please, thanks very much.
Sounds good, yeah. Well, I was born in Glasgow, moved to Edinburgh when I was very young, 3 years old. Grew up in mostly Hibs and Hearts supporting area, and yeah, I would prefer Hibs. Would be my club of choice, but that's me as a fan, me as a writer. I'm interested in everything in Scottish football, basically every club from the biggest to the smallest, everything in between, glory, comedy, all the things that make Scottish football great, really, and the international team as well. So yeah, grew up loving football throughout the 80s, 90s, and into the 21st century. And yeah, and then I thought, well, there's all these great little stories, and let's put them together in one book, like a collection of articles, basically.
Yeah, and I noticed from reading the start of the book that you don't hide the fact you're a Hibs fan because you think your dad for taking you to see Hibs, so that's okay. Well, don't worry about that. That's fine. No, that's fine. But I also noticed that although it's 99 iconic moments, you started off with 117. So how did you decide which ones were in?
When I was going through it, I started off thinking I'll probably have about 100, and I thought 99 sounded like a nice number. And then I ended up, when you're doing it, you sort of think of other things as well. One thing leads to another when you're researching something. There's some stories in there that I didn't know about before I started doing the research, like Inverness Caledonian having floodlights before everyone else, but then them getting moved to Loch Ness to try and find Nessie in the 30s, which did actually happen. It sounds like a made-up Victorian story about the Highlands, but it's actually true. I didn't know about that before, and I found out about that when I was researching the book. And so yeah, I ended up with like 117 moments, but I decided to keep it sort of quite relatively sort of still quite a lot of stories, but keep it quite focused and have a bit of variety in it, because there's some I could put in loads of great cup finals. I left out Rangers Aberdeen's League Cup final in the late 90s. I think it was quite a special final. Because there was loads of other finals, and there's loads of stories about Rangers, there's loads of stories about Aberdeen. I left out Killie beating Eintracht Frankfurt 5-1 or 5-0 in the early 60s, because there's a lot of good stories about Killie round about then as well, and lots of good stories about Scottish clubs beating big European clubs, especially 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s as well. Right up to Rangers beating Leeds, showing Leeds a few lessons in the Battle of Britain in the late 90s. So yeah, I wanted to get variety, basically, and keep it and have as much. Well, that's one of the main things, basically. So there were some stories that I could have included that I left out. I didn't include Hibs beating Rangers in the cup final, for example. Quite tempted, but left that out.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, but no, I mean, what I forgot to do at the start, folks, this is the book. This is the book. This is what you're looking for on your bookshelves. We'll do this again before we go, hopefully, if I remember. It is very, very good. As I say, it's Pitch Publishing's. It's £17 or £16.99 to be exact. It is very good. It's what I would refer to as a toilet book, and Mark doesn't mind me calling it that because I checked with him. And that doesn't mean it's not good. That means that it's a sort of book, because it's effectively 99 little stories of varying lengths, so you can pick it up and put it down. So if you go to the toilet to hide from the kids and the wife, you can read it. Or you can just sit and read all the way through it. You could do what I did when I first got it and go, right, how many Ranger stories are in it? Then go, right, how many positive Ranger stories are in it? Because the negative ones I didn't bother with. To be fair, most of them I'm aware of anyway. I just don't really want to read about getting beat 7-1 by Celtic in the League Cup final. Thank you very much. I might get very invested. But there is 8 positive Ranger stories in it. So
Right.
that's out of 99. That's quite good.
Yeah, and there's an index in the back as well, so you can go straight to your club of choice, and the index only includes the positive stories. So.
Yeah. I mean, but there's also the, at the front it details the 99 stories. So, and interestingly, they're not in any sort of order, or are they? They're certainly not in chronological order.
No, they're not in chronological order. I sort of approached it as if sort of how I imagine it must be like to decide the order of songs on an album. If you're putting together, if you're blessed enough to be in a rock band and you put together an album and you get them sort of flowing in a way that feels good. The final 3 stories are ones that I sort of thought were possibly the 3 most iconic moments in Scottish football, and maybe a little bit controversial.
I'll disagree with 2 of them.
Right. So yeah, one of them is Archie.
I'll give you Archie Gemmell's goal.
Yeah, you can have that. Yeah.
Given I live in Aberdeen, I'm not giving you the Cup Winners' Cup in '83.
Right. Okay.
But no, I understand it's personal. It is personal choice, and as I say, the way you've written it, you can just it's fairly clear what each chapter is, more or less. I mean, there is 1 or 2 that are a bit cryptic, but if you know anything about what you're reading, there is 1 or 2 that you would need to think, okay, what does that actually mean? I mean, the return of Bobby Coombe. If you didn't know who Bobby Coombe was, what does that refer to? But you've got things like Dundee Hibs almost become Dundee City. That's one that absolutely fascinated me, because I knew that Dundee United were originally Dundee Hibernian, but I had no idea of the process between going to that to what they are now, and to what they could possibly have been called at one time,
and how close it came to being that as well. There was a cast. I think it was the league chairman's cast and vote, basically, when they wanted to be Dundee City. And Dundee were like, oh no, you can't call yourselves that, because people get confused and think that who's Dundee City. But somehow they thought Dundee United was all right. And I think the Celtic chairman at the time suggested something like Dundee Shamrock might be an idea.
Yeah. That would have been quite funny if they'd got that, to be fair. But to go back to the Rangers on it, because obviously we are a Rangers podcast. The moments with Rangers, I am aware of all of them. I think, again, they're not in any order, so I just lifted them in the order they were in the book. So for those Rangers fans watching, and everybody watching will probably be a Rangers fan, I'd imagine, although we do get a few of the other side watching in my normal podcast, as you can imagine. It's a Cup Winners' Cup final 1972, which is quite early in the book. So if you're doing it as an album listing, I would say you put your better songs at the beginning. So we'll take that. I'll have that one. Thank you very much. Ali McCoy's Golden Boot, of which he's got 2. The 1959 Old Firm Select, which was a new one on me. The fact that Rangers and Celtic got together in '59, I was totally unaware of that.
Yeah, and also when I looked into that more, there was a few other times, sort of charity games and things, and what do you call it, testimonials as well, earlier on. Yeah.
There was also, to get back to the list of Rangers ones, also 1992 with Leeds, the Battle of Britain, which obviously I remember. I was at the home leg, couldn't go to the away leg because they didn't let us travel. Although 1 or 2 did go down. I've heard some cracking stories about that as well. Paul Gascoigne getting booked against Hibs when he booked the referee. I've got a cracking story about that day as well, but I won't because it implicates a friend of mine, so I'm not going to bother with that one. Maurice Johnston obviously scoring against Celtic in 1989, and signing for Rangers and all that good stuff. Marco Negri, I want to come back to that because there's something that you probably, I absolutely guarantee you don't know about that occasion. Right. And obviously, the first ever title, which we shared with Dumbarton. So that's the 8, what I would say, positive things about Rangers, or 7.5 if you include the Old Firm Select as a half. So out of 99, I think that's quite good. But what I would say to anybody watching this, I mean, obviously, the whole idea of having you on, Mark, is to try and promote your book. Right now, this for me is a sort of book my sister would buy me. Now, the reason my sister would buy me it is because obviously she knows I'm Rangers daft, and if it's to do with Rangers and I want it, I've probably already got it, right? And most people watching this will be the same. So if you've got a relative who is a follower of any club in Scotland, and you think, what can I get them? If they like football, get them this. Because there's so much football content in it, and it doesn't necessarily have to be their club. I mean, for example, I wouldn't go into a bookshop and go, I'm buying that Celtic book for a friend of mine that's a Celtic fan. but I would buy them this because, you know what I mean? It's all mixtures of football, you know. Also, if you've got somebody that's in your life that's generally just interested in football, it's absolutely perfect because, as you say, it covers all genres, it covers everybody. But to go back to the Marco Negri thing, you know, the chapter's about him scoring an awful lot of goals, and he scored an awful lot of goals. But if I remember, it highlights when he scored 5 against Dundee United. And the thing I always remember about that, in the match programme for that day, which was obviously printed 2 or 3 days before, there's an article in it about the last time a Rangers player scored 5 goals in a league game. And it was in 1973 by Derek Parlin.
Right.
That was in the programme the day that Negri scored 5.
Right.
How's that for a coincidence?
It's
just something I've always remembered. It's so coincidental.
Yeah, I mean that's a massive coincidence, isn't it? That's you think that's the sort of thing they would write in the next programme. So what was the last time that someone scored 5?
Exactly, yeah, exactly. But
yeah,
it was in the programme that day. So, but
maybe,
anyway,
maybe the programme editor had been keeping an eye on the Dundee United defence in the previous matches.
Possibly. So anyway, back to the book. Let's get off of Rangers. We'll talk about some of the things. I don't want to go in too much detail to the actual stories in the book because obviously the whole idea is people will buy the book and read it and enjoy it. But one or two things I picked out from looking through it is I can't believe that the IFAB, the International Football Association, have been called IFAB since 1891. That absolutely blew me away.
I know. And
normally something like that would change their name somewhere along the line.
Especially because they're not really very international.
Yeah.
It's basically still half British.
Yeah, because the home nation still get a vote each, don't they?
Yeah, so which is 4 of the 8 votes. Yeah.
You know, so I mean that's the sort of James, it's in the book, the first ever penalty. That was mental. That was crazy.
Yeah, it was scored in the Airdrie, and like you're saying, it was IFAB obviously set the rules, and they set the rule in Glasgow. And there was a meeting in Glasgow when they decided that penalties would be a thing, and and then the first ever penalty was scored for Royal Albert, the team from Larkhall in Airdrie, about 10 days later.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that's the sort of thing that I like to think I know about football. You know, I mean, when I was younger, I was immersed, like any young kid. You would have been the same yourself. I was absolutely immersed in football. I get the feeling from the book you're still immersed in a lot more than just your club and in Scotland and all that. Me, exactly. I've got tunnel vision.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I'm fascinated by everything, basically. You know, I mean, weekend before last, a friend and I went up to Brora, to see Brora Rangers play against Huntly. And we watched and on the way there, we're not groundhoppers, we wouldn't call ourselves groundhoppers, but we like to go to all sorts of different games, just to interesting clubs and interesting places. Yeah. And we watched the first half of Invergordon against Fort William before going to Brora on the road there, because just to see something else on the way, because we've gone all that way. And and watching Brora was great.
It's a cracking we set up at Brora, isn't it? I've been up to Brora. We did a couple of pre-seasons up there with Rangers.
It's a great setup. You're right. It's they're a good team as well for the Highland League, and
it's a long way to go though.
definitely, but it was worth it.
Yeah, see, I do things like that, but I don't go out my way to go to games like that. If I'm in the area and there's a game, I'll go because I like watching football. I mean, you see, Invergordon, Fort William. That's the sort of game I would pitch up at because I'm actually originally from Fort William. That's my hometown.
Oh, right.
So I used to, when they were in the Highland League, if they were playing in the northeast, I'd try and go and see them because obviously I'm based in Aberdeen. So if they were up here, I would try and go and see them if they were at Huntly or Inverurie or Keith or somewhere like that. If it didn't clash with Rangers playing, and they quite rightly get relegated because they're not very good. You know what I mean?
I don't want to speak ill of anyone, but they weren't very good the other week against Invergordon either. And there's quite a big gap between the Highland League and the North Kelly League as well.
Yeah, massive gap. I mean, they're only, I think they're about mid-table in the North Carolina League as well. It's not as even as if they're fighting at the top of it. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's a nice place to go and watch football. Let's see, when I was younger, I was immersed in all that sort of stuff. But nowadays, I'll watch match of the day if it happens to be on and I'm in the house. The rest of it, look at the results. But that's it. Because people say to me, what about this guy? That don't have a clue. So it's nice to have something like this because a lot of the things in this I can relate to because I was either about at the time or I've heard about them, because obviously it goes all the way back to, you know, the early football in the 1880s, and it comes right up to date as well, which is good, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the other things that absolutely, we'll go back to our Rangers connection. One that absolutely blew me away that I didn't know about. Obviously, I knew about our 1971-72 European run when we got knocked out of Europe, but went back in again because the referee made a mess of the extra time goal. I didn't realise that refereed the second leg of the UEFA Cup final.
Yeah, I know. I always like looking into the referees that make mistakes, because UEFA and FIFA don't seem to punish them for it. They seem to end up getting big games. It's like Les Mortram, wasn't who? The goal that never was, Dundee United away to Partick, and the ball was in the net. The only person in the stadium that didn't see it was Les Mortram, and the Partick defender picked the ball up and handed it to his goalie, and he was waving play on, and then he ended up refereeing at the World Cup after that.
Yeah, I remember that. I actually spoke to somebody who drunk at the same bowling club as Les Mortram, and apparently what he said was he wasn't sure. He looked at his linesman, who looked back at him, and when he looked round again, the goalkeeper had the ball in his hands. He never saw the defender handing the goalkeeper the ball.
All right, because he was looking at the linesman.
It's his excuse, and obviously he can only give what he sees.
Well, no, that's true, isn't it? It's difficult for refs, but
of course it is.
But yeah, I mean, what can look right at it.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one of those moments that if you're around at the time, you'll never forget it. I mean, that's the only thing I know about Les Mortram. I couldn't have told you he went to the World Cup, but I knew he did that. You know what I mean? I knew that he missed a goal that was a goal, and then if it wasn't a goal, it was a penalty because the defender handed the ball to the goalkeeper. You know what I mean? You know, that doesn't make the book. I don't think. Does that make the book?
It's in
the book. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh well, there you go. It does make the book. So, but yeah, I mean, there is. See, there you go. I did tell you I haven't read it all. I have looked through it. I mean, there's loads and loads of fascinating stuff in this. You know what I mean, even one that I didn't think I'd be interested. Jimmy McCrory scoring 8 goals in one game. I didn't think I'd be interested in something. But to me, that's incredible. That any football player can score 8 goals in a game.
Was he one of the players that transcends? He was just so good that it's hard to dislike him. I don't know. It was a long time ago, wasn't it? We don't really know. But
I don't really know, because I've got no. I just know that you played with them. But I mean, that's just an incredible achievement by anybody for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Scoring that amount of goals in one game of football.
He was, yeah. He scored a ridiculous amount of goals. Yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously you've got our both beating Bonaccord. That'll go down well with my friends up this neck of the woods, because Bonaccord transcended into Aberdeen, so that'll go down well up here.
Yeah, and then on the same day, Dundee Heart beat another Aberdeen team, 35 now.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
But apparently it might have been 37, but nobody really knows.
Yeah.
That's in the book now.
And then the one I'm just having a look here, picking something out. The one here coming in at number 77 that I better not tell my girlfriend's in here, because I'm going to let her read this because she's a football fan as well. It's Albert Gidday, and when I say she won't be happy about that, you'll know who she's. Oh yes, big time season ticket holder. Yeah, she is. So I better not tell her that's in there, or she'll not be reading it.
No.
So,
well, there's stuff in there for Hearts fans as well.
Oh yeah, there is. I mean, that's what I was saying earlier. The good thing is, this is the sort of book you buy anybody in your family that likes football. And you don't know what to get them for Christmas, for example. You know, because they can pass it around the family, or they could just pick out the bits they want if they're just generally involved in football. I mean, you've got 4 great goals in it. Because I think it'd have been easy for you, as you said at the beginning. You had 116, 117. And you took a lot of games out. Games you can find out about them on YouTube. You can read articles about them. It's all the stories associated with them. And I noticed you put 4 great goals in it. You could probably have filled it with great goals. You could have filled it with great games. And the great goals you've put in it, I don't really think you could argue with any of them. Scott McTominay's against Spain. I mean, I'm not an international football fan, period. But that's iconic just because of what it was.
Yeah,
you've got Tony Watt scoring the winner against Barcelona when he was only 17 years old or something at the time.
He was either 17 or 18.
Yeah. So, I mean, okay.
And that was peak Barcelona as well. That was
yeah. I mean, I wasn't happy about that at the time, obviously, because of who he scored it for, but it's still an achievement. Just like we say, Jimmy McCrory scoring 8 goals in a game is an achievement. Anybody scoring the winner against Barcelona for a Scottish club is special. I mean, Dundee United have played them 4 times, beat them 4 times. That's special.
Exactly. Yeah, one of them's in the book as well.
Yeah, and for a 17-year-old to score the winner, that's incredible. That's just something else.
No, I think he just joined from Airdrie for like £35,000, I think it was.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. You've also got, not to take too much out of the book, the other two goals you've got James McFadden's against France, which was a hell of a hit.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest. And then the one that I would say is probably certainly the greatest Scotland goal of all time is Archie Gemmel's against Holland in 1978.
Absolutely. It's a great goal. And
that was
match as well, the most Scottish match of all time as well. Almost playing brilliantly, almost getting the ridiculous victory that we needed, but of course, not getting it.
Yeah, I mean, after being humbled by Peru, drawing with Iran thanks to their own goal, having to beat Holland by 3 goals and only beating them, had to beat by 3 goals, only beating them 3-2, just ridiculous. That you say, the most Scottish thing in the history of football.
It's nice. I put myself back through some of that Iran game for the research for that piece, and it's just, it's horrendous. Absolutely horrendous.
I was almost 10 from that. I was almost 10, and I can still remember it because I was, as I say, at that time I was immersed in football, and it was just horrific. It was just horrific. I can still remember it. Just horrific because Scotland. I mean, we genuinely thought we were going to win that World Cup.
Well, I know it was a bit delusional, but it probably was the most open World Cup of all time. Argentina were the only decent team there.
And they did go on to win it, so you know what I mean. So it's also nice for me, back to what you've got in the book, that you've got Rose Riley winning the World Cup in this, because I follow the Scottish women's football as well, because Rangers play in it and we're quite good. So it's quite nice that you've got that in it as well. Because there's been a lot of focus on her recently as well, because I think BBC Scotland did a big piece on her.
That's right,
a few weeks ago.
And Julie Fleeting's the other one that's in the books.
Yep.
Scored over 100 goals for Scotland and played for Arsenal, played in America. They called her Air Scotland when she was in America because she was such a great header of the ball. But our female football players have sort of been a lot better than the governing bodies have treated women's football over the history of the game.
Yeah, they have, and they've gone and they've probably been more successful at what they're doing than the men have. Any male that's gone abroad, really, any Scottish male that's gone abroad, really, if you think about it, they've been. Rose Riley's held in huge. She ended up playing for Italy. She's held in huge regard,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
We've got some young players now that getting that way, but I don't think they'll ever be as. Even going back to when I was younger, guys like Steve Archibald went away to Spain, did okay, and they're still revered in some bits, but not nearly as highly as some of the women are from back then.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and we also Scotland also won the first ever women's football match, which was
yes, they did
in the book. But
I actually pointed that out to we do a women's podcast on here, and I actually pointed it out to the. Actually, what I did, actually, I photo the page and put it on our group chat so the girls could read it. Because we've got two of the lassies on our women's podcast go to all the women's games. They would go to a women's game over the Rangers men's team. That's just what they do.
Right. Yeah.
And they went playing in high heels. I
don't
mean all that. Just incredible. And they're immersed in women's football. They were totally unaware of that.
Yeah, because it was the first ever women's international, but it was kind of almost more a sort of novelty theatre thing that some obviously men had put on to sort of as a money making thing, and but Scotland won it, so we should count it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I say, the book's full of stuff like that. I mean, I was having another look at it earlier on, and I had a reread the Wembley Wizards chapter, and I know about the Wembley Wizards 1928 Scotland beat England 5-1, but what I didn't know until I read your chapter in the book was that of the front line, the tallest player was 5'7".
Yeah,
they had dropped 3 of the biggest players of the time in McCrory, Meikle, and McPhail. And the one that I thought was absolutely mental, the Afghanistan royal family were there.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you find stuff like that out? That's incredible.
Well, this is the bit I enjoy the most about the book, is about doing stuff like this. Old newspapers are brilliant. So there's the National Library of Scotland, got all the old newspapers in Edinburgh, and then there's also the online. There's a National Newspaper Archive that you have to subscribe to, but it's brilliant. You can get in such a rabbit hole, of like going down and just finding all these little details and stuff. And some of this stuff, some people might not have read it for 100 years. Just like there was a piece about Motherwell winning the Copa del Rey about 100 years ago. It wasn't the real Copa del Rey, but it was a pretty major special version of it. And from local Motherwell paper from over 100 years ago, I got access to some copies of that, and the level of detail was brilliant in those papers. And it's just, I just love finding those things, and sort of giving them exposure again. Those details.
Yeah, that chapter was particularly good because I had absolutely no knowledge of that at all. I mean, I had no knowledge of that at all. I mean,
well, neither did I.
I thought that can't be right. There's no way that can be right. But you read it and it's right. It's great.
I'll tell you the thing that sparked me to do the book, because I've written loads of articles for magazines like Nutmeg and When Saturday Comes about similar things to this, and but then I thought the thing that made me think I've possibly got enough to put a book together was I was just like looking at this on Twitter from the National Library of Scotland, and it was about some old books that they digitised. And one of them was a 1920s book about the history of St Mirren up till then. And there was a photo of them with the Barcelona Cup. And I was like, what's the Barcelona Cup? And it's just looking into that and trying to find out what that was. That's what really got me going on this. And then I looked into that, and then I found out, I thought that's a brilliant story about St Mirren winning the Barcelona Cup. But then I found out that Motherwell had won it as well. But at the same time, Motherwell had won the special version of the Copa del Rey. And I was like, that knocks my St Mirren story out into a cocked hat. It's like they're both good stories, but yeah, it's just finding these things out. It's brilliant. Love it.
Yes, I mean, as I say, the detail in the book's tremendous. I mean, it's absolutely. I mean, I'm just again looking through just the chapter titles. For folk that want to possibly buy it for people that aren't Rangers fans, if you like. You've got Queen's Park, you've got Partick Thistle. Jim Baxter's Keep Your Ups Against England, which obviously everybody knows of, iconic stuff. Dumbarton Rangers sharing the first league title. Scotland beating the Russians. Eyemouth United reaching the Scottish Cup quarter final. That particularly tickled me. I thought that was quite funny.
I love that one. It's just like it's like a novel. It's like a children's novel. It's yeah. They just played really well. Just a bunch of fishermen playing football, playing it well. Got to the quarter final against Killie, in the early 60s when Killie were really good, and gave them a good game. Yeah.
Yes, that's what a lot of people forget. They forget that, back in the 50s, 60s, and not so much the 70s, the early part of the 70s, Scottish football wasn't all about Rangers and Celtic.
Yeah.
I mean, it was Hibs. I mean, for a period, Hibs were challenging Rangers for everything, and then. Yeah, as you see in the 60s, it was before Celtic went on their march to 9-0. It was Kilmarnock were in their hearts were running them close. Yeah. You had St Mirren getting the cup final, all that sort of stuff. People don't think about things like that, and there's loads of that stuff covered in here.
Dundee played in as well. Dundee won the league in the 60s, 45 to 65. Yeah, Aberdeen, Kilmarnock. Yeah, when Killie won the league in 65, and it was like a cup final the last day of the season. They were at Tynecastle and they needed to beat Hearts to win a goal difference or goal average, as it was.
Goal average, because if it was goal difference, Hearts would have won it. Yeah.
Oh, and then on Albert Kidd Day, I think it was the other way around.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Albert Kidd. Something I still can't mention Albert Kidd's name with my girlfriend's sister. Not allowed to. I've mentioned it once, and I just about got away with it.
My favourite thing about that whole story is just Billy Connolly being starstruck when he saw Albert Kidd in Australia. It's just like Billy Connolly being starstruck. It's just like
It's just. I mean, it is some of the stuff you've dug up is absolutely fantastic. I mean, the first dugouts being at Pataudry and just
in the world. Yeah.
It's just incredible some of the stories that you've got in it. As I say, I would encourage anybody that's got anybody in their family that's a football fan that they're struggling to get them anything for the Christmas or for a birthday, whatever. Just get this book because it really is. I mean, even something that I couldn't quite believe was how Jack Steedman became involved at Clydebank. Because obviously that matters to me because my football hero is Davy Cooper, who we bought from Clydebank. And the legend has it that Jack Steedman talked Davy Cooper into staying at Clydebank when he was going to give up football.
Right.
Looking at the chapter in your book, Jack Steedman only got involved with Clydebank because they went to East Stirling, and East Stirling Clydebank didn't work.
Yeah.
So he left and went to Clydebank. That's just stuff that I've had absolutely no concept of.
Yeah, that East Stirling Clydebank merger was bizarre. Just like merging two Scottish clubs for a year, and yeah. So, and
again, that was within my lifetime, and I've had no knowledge of it at all. And I think I used to think I knew a lot about Scottish football.
Well, that's what I like doing. I like getting the sort of, as well as the famous stories like Archie Kemmel scoring and European trophies and stuff like that. I liked getting all the sort of obscure stories as well. That are interesting obscure stories. I really enjoyed sort of putting them alongside the more famous ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I send you out here, one that I really have to touch on because it's quite early. It's quite early in the book as well, and I was drawn to it because it's actually the second thing in the book after the first ever penalty. Was when Claudio Caniggia signed for Dundee. Now it wasn't the fact that Claudio Caniggia signed for Dundee. It was a story. It was a story around about it when Daniel Passarella was Caniggia's manager at Argentina.
Oh yeah, no long hair and yeah. No earrings,
no homosexuals, and no long hair.
Yeah,
you can get away with that now.
Wasn't that long ago either, was it?
No, it wasn't. No, it really wasn't. But again, that's something that people will have heard of Claudio Caniggia. A lot of Rangers fans will have heard of Claudio Caniggia and have no concept that he came from Dundee.
Right.
How did Dundee get Claudio Caniggia?
I know. I remember it. I remember it happening. It seems more remarkable now than it did then. It was just when everyone was spending loads of money, weren't they? We had a bit of TV money going on, and everyone was like chucking the cash.
Yeah, well, around. They got Ravanelli. Dundee got Ravanelli in as well.
That was slightly after as well. They'd already sort of splashed all this cash on loads of players, and they got some other really good players as well, like Juan Serra and Julian Speroni, the goalie, who ended up at Crystal Palace, and they absolutely love him down there. And Caniggia is just like, it's off his scale. I mean, I think Dundee got a manager who had no managerial experience but had a brilliant contacts book, and Benetti, wasn't it? I think, and he basically went through his contacts book and said, fancy coming to Scotland and earning a bit of cash and playing in the top flight.
It's just nuts, isn't it? It's just absolutely. I mean, that's the sort of thing that's in this book. Little things like that you would have absolutely no idea of. I mean, like saying you can play for Dundee, but I had no idea about the rest of it. So once again, the book is 99 Iconic Moments in Scottish Football. That's what it looks like. It's by our good friends at Pitch Publishing, who have been really, really good to Rangers Rabble. So if you could do as a wee turn and go out and buy the book, do Mark a wee turn as well. So, Mark, what's next? Is the 18 that you missed out? Are they going into volume 2?
Well, I think I will do some stuff with some of them. Might see if some of them could be good articles from Nutmeg magazine, or when Saturday comes, there are a couple of places to write for, maybe, or somewhere else. But in terms of books, I'm thinking I would like to do one on Scottish derbies, basically, everything from the big one to Fraserburgh against Peterhead. Not that happens anymore, but like
but it does in the Aberdeenshire Cup.
Right. Well, there you go. Thanks.
But it's not Peterhead's first team. It's the same as like Aberdeen still playing that, but it's not their first team. They still play all that sort of stuff.
Oh, I might give myself up for a Fraserburgh Peterhead game in the.
That would be a tremendous book. It really would, because I mean there is derbies that people don't. I mean, would you go as deep as the juniors?
Well, I would do Cumnock against Auchinleck.
I was going to say that was the first one I was thinking about, to be fair.
Yeah, I know that's part of the thing that made me think about it. Is like just the variety of derbies we've got. The Lanarkshire ones, the Fife ones, St Mirren, Morton. Edinburgh, Dundee. It's just. I think I would like to do that. Sort of take a sort of fresh look at them. And sort of fresh, honest look and see what's different about them. Because I think it just always comes back to the fact that Scotland's got such a rich football culture. I don't think there's many countries in the world that love football more than we do, and are that into it, that obsessed with it. And I think that really comes across in the derbies and the variety in there as well. I think is there.
I think so. I mean, and I think as well, a lot of people watching this that are obviously football fans because they're watching this won't understand the intensity of some of these smaller derbies, if you like. You know,
No.
like the Auchan like Cumbric. I mean, they hate each other. You know, you've got like the game that was here on Friday night, Dunfermline Athletic against Wraith Rovers. They're not particularly fond of each other either. You wouldn't think it's two teams from Fife.
I know.
You know what I mean?
And then you've got East Fife in the mix as well with Wraith. Then you've got Falkirk into the mix with Dunfermline. And and all the different levels there. There was used to be East Fife and Cowdenbeath a bit as well. And
yeah, well, I hope you get that off the ground, because I'd love to speak to you about that. That's a book I would certainly be interested in having a read of. So, and I'd read all of that. I wouldn't just pick out the book. You know what I mean? So, but anyway, once again, folks, the book, as I said, Iconic Moments in Scottish Football, 99 of them, by Mark Poole, from our good friends at Pitch Publishing, $16.99. So you'll even get change out of £17 for it. What can you get for that? He's like, that's not even half a night out. So, available from all your good book stockists, even some bad book stockists will have it as well, I'd imagine.
I hope so.
Once again, Mark, thanks very much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks very much, Wilf. Nice to meet you. I really enjoyed it.
Hopefully we'll be speaking to you about a Derby's book sometime in the future.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Cheers. Thank you.
Nice